SmartBuilt4EU is an EU-funded project which supports innovators from the smart building value chain through concrete networking and communication actions. It also develops a strategic research agenda combined with policy recommendations. Together with Régis Decorme, project partner for SmartBuilt4EU, and my guest for this episode, we are going to discuss how the project will support the further uptake of smart buildings. Welcome, Régis, and would you please describe in a few words the SmartBuilt4EU project?
Good morning, Areti, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce SmartBuilt4EU. So indeed, we are a coordination and support action funded by the European Commission, and our aim is to develop the European community of stakeholders who are interested in smart buildings. So that's really, let's say, a networking action. Our aim is to collect typically best practices when it comes to smart buildings, example of technologies, for instance. And then the second main objective is indeed to reflect on a roadmap of research. So it's about identifying what are the most important let's say topics to explore in the coming next years, and that will be hopefully funded by the Commission.
Speaking of the topics that the project will explore, which needs of the EU energy sector do you think it's going to cover?
So it's very wide actually, because in this community that we have started to assemble, we have now more than 350 stakeholders who are coming, from the industry, but also from the public sector. And when you talk about smart buildings, it's about energy, but it can be more than this. It can go about topics on comfort. Smart buildings, it's being energy efficient, but it's also being comfortable. It's being accessible also for elderly people. So you see there's a lot of needs, a lot of requirements, and a lot of technologies to address that. So when it comes to energy, one topic which is very, let's say, trendy, it's about flexibility, of course, for the grid. So that's one of the criteria which a smart building is expected to address.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But you did mention 350 stakeholders at least. So who is involved in this project? It's massive, right?
Yeah, because it's a European community, and I believe we are the very first European community around this topic. So that's why we have, of course, representatives from various member states, and so we have indeed a large industry, SMEs, associations as well at national level. We do have a few national associations on smart buildings, and we try to make them network and talk together in this SmartBuilt4EU community. So that's why we have so many players. But it's important also to define the future research topics, because we want, of course, to these topics to be representative of the needs. And so that's why we welcome very much the inputs from a lot of stakeholders to define those themes, let's say.
Yeah, that makes total sense. However, I would also assume that the people that are the stakeholders also represent kind of the target audience of the project. So my question to you is, who is your actual target audience?
The target audience is really the scientific community. It's really the researchers, because we define together the topics, and then probably these are the same players who are going to implement the research, who are going to work on these future innovations and develop them together. So it's really...
And I was thinking while you were saying about the scientific community, etc., that a topic and a project devoted to smart buildings, it involves a lot of technologies. So I would like to ask you, what are the technologies that are indispensable for smart buildings? And also, if you can give me sort of your vision of the smart building of tomorrow.
Yeah, so it's an excellent question, actually. And again, in SmartBuilt4EU, so we developed some brochures to, let's say, make a directory of what we call the most promising innovations when it comes to smart buildings. But now we have a book of something like 30 what we call success stories, yeah. And it's very, very different, the technologies that you can think about. So typically I can perhaps mention two of them, which I think are important. So there is a cluster of technologies. It's related to smart building envelopes. So it's really, you know, instead of having passive components in the envelope of a building, it's, for instance, the envelope is going to generate energy. So that's one example of an active component. And I think that it fully makes sense. And now the technology is available. You do have, for instance, photovoltaic glass. You have more and more office buildings with full glass facades. And it's a shame that those glass facades are just passive. You know, it does nothing. And now there is the technology available for the glass to produce energy. So it's combining, you know, photovoltaic and glass. So that's one example, again, of smart facade components. And then another trend that we see, it's on artificial intelligence applied to buildings. And here, for instance, you can make the parallel to autonomous driving, for vehicles. This is now something that is on the market. And you could imagine the same technology applied to buildings to autonomously drive their management, their operation, you know. And so these components, they are there to, for instance, to control the HVAC system, okay, for heating, ventilation, cooling. It's all about optimizing. But now with artificial intelligence, you can make things really transparent and seamless for the end users, for the occupants, that they have less to care about. And with the technology, it's going to learn about their behavior, etc. And it's going to optimize without any effort. So, and again, it's a technology which is there, I believe, but it still needs to be demonstrated and to be more democratized in a way, so that it becomes available on the market.
Exactly. And technologies like artificial intelligence, they need some robust regulation. Yeah. So do you think that the EU Commission has some current rules and regulations, right? Do you think that these current rules and regulations are okay for now, or do we need something more? It needs to be elaborated a little bit more.
So it's another excellent question, by the way, and quite complex one in that case, because the regulations, it's indeed at EU level, but then it's also at national level. There are quite some discrepancies. So I believe that at least at the EU level, there is a very strong element at the moment, which is coming in terms of regulation, and it's the Smart Readiness Indicator. So it's a new certificate promoted by the European Commission, which is going to rate the smart readiness of a building. Okay, so it's similar to the EPC, to the Energy Performance Certificate, where it's, of course, linked to energy efficiency. And in that case, the Smart Readiness Indicator, it's really about the way how smart is your building. And in that case, okay, it's a certificate, so you're going to get a grade, you know, from A to G. So very similar to EPC. But we think that typically this kind of certificate is going really to push for smart buildings technologies, and it's going to support the regulation to be adapted to welcome this technology and to make it easier to implement that. So we are quite confident about that, because it's the member states there are now 7 member states who are doing a testing phase of the Smart Readiness Indicator, and it's quite promising already. So we believe it's going to support us in a great way to implement this portfolio of innovations.
Yeah, this sounds great. Those 7 countries that you said, do they represent the entire spectrum of the European community? Because there's a huge difference in the gears, let's say, in readiness gears between the south, the north, east, west. So
yeah, so I'm quite confident again, because when I mentioned 7 countries, we are just at the beginning, actually, of the SRA implementation, and we do expect in the coming months to have more member states joining, just because also the Commission is funding new projects under the LIFE program, which are focused on this SRA certificate, and we believe that through these projects, additional member states, I think 16 member states are involved in those ones, and so it will be a way to have more of them being involved, and indeed to become more representative of the whole spectrum and get more feedback and to consolidate this certificate. So it's a really interesting one because it looks at energy efficiency, of course, but also there are many different impact criteria. So it's about comfort, convenience, about health as well, health of the occupants, well-being, accessibility. There is one criteria which is looking at flexibility. So it's really considering the building as a whole, and it's going to make an holistic assessment of smart readiness. And it's like for EPC, at the end, it has an impact on the value of your home, of your property. And we believe that the SRI is going as well to do the same. When you get a good grade of your building on this SRI, it's going to increase its value on the market. So at the end, it's like a snowball effect. It's going to push everyone to adopt these innovations.
Hopefully this will happen. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to think something like that. But all this talking about smart buildings made me think of smart cities also, because one thing leads to the other. So as my last question to you, I would like to have your vision on the smart city.
So I believe you're right. It's very linked, and I believe we have equivalent initiatives at SmartBuilt4EU, but at the city scale, and we do talk together, and there are great examples coming from the smart cities field, which we can in a way replicate, and so we have examples. We are networking with them in this community of SmartBuilt4EU. So I think the two scale have to work together. And when it comes to the flexibility criteria, of course, just looking at a building, at a single building alone, does not make sense. So you have to work at least at the district scale, but then also looking at the city scale. So it's quite, I would say, complementary. But the good news is that, again, we are in touch, we collaborate, and that's the entire aim of a project like SmartBuilt4EU. It's to build this community as wide as possible, and of course to incorporate the feedback from everyone, including municipalities, for sure.
And with this positive note, I would like to thank you, Régis, very much for our conversation.
Thank you very much, Areti.
And thank you for joining us.